I'm Anastasia Chatzka, a fashion designer with over 20 years of experience and a sewing educator. And I'm really excited you're here to share another sewing adventure with me today. Hi! Welcome to Sew Anastasia, and today I'm going to give you a tour of my design studio. So let's go! Before I give you a tour of the studio, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a Chicago-based fashion designer, and I've been sewing for over 20 years. I ran my own boutique for over 10 years and designed and manufactured everything in the US. And now I work out of my design studio. I create sewing YouTube tutorials, I teach sewing classes, and I work on custom design orders for clients. I've even worked in New York City with Anna Sweet and Betsy Johnson. I love fashion so much. I've been working at this dream forever. I started in my bedroom with an industrial sewing machine and fabric and pins and everything everywhere. It was complete chaos. And I was creating out of my bedroom like I know a lot of you are right now. I'm super excited to show you my design studio because I've worked super hard to get here and I am so very proud of it. So let's check it out. When you first walk into my design studio, you're gonna see my favorite Juki industrial sewing machine because I've had this since I was 15 in my bedroom. She's a sewaholic. I love this sewing machine so much because it sews through everything and it's so fast. Plus, I've had it forever. We're like old BFFs. To the right of my studio, when you walk in, we have our sanitizing station. So important right now. Face masks, wipes, lotions, thermometer. We're gonna check and see how warm you are. Me, hot, too hot. I love collecting vintage sewing notions. These are just a few from my collection. And I love the sign up here that says the Golden Fleece. This is an original vintage print. So cool. I even have an unused box of thread from way back in the day. Check it out. It is so cool. These spools are all wood and they have little prints on the end of the wood spools. I love the illustrations and details on vintage sewing notions. They are so cute. And this one's never even been used. I've got to find the perfect project to use this for. As we keep going, you're gonna notice my pattern wall here. So I've got a row of vintage patterns. I love the sketches on these. They are so sweet. And then above up here, I have all of my patterns that I've designed from scratch for different collections or client orders. There are so many patterns up there. It's crazy to think that I've designed all those patterns. I keep them around so when I have an order that comes up or I want to make something, I have somewhere to start from. I've already done all the work for that, so why get rid of it? Along this wall, we also have sergers and embroidery machines, along with this serger that is over 100 years old. Check it out. So this here is a marrow machine, which is basically like a serger. And these little gaskets up here get full of oil to help it work. It is so cool. I don't even know how old it is. I even contacted the marrow company to find out more about this machine and they didn't have any information on it. If any of you know anything about it, please leave it down below because I would love to know more about this machine. Here are all my tote bags that I design and give out to everybody who takes a sewing class with me. It says I love sewing and then Sew Anastasia on the other side. So I'm always making them in different colors of fabrics and textures. This here is the catch-all corner. I've got bags of clothes I'm selling. Up here, I've got some vintage jackets, and then way up there, I have vintage wedding dresses, and then I have slopers and muslin, so that way I can fit clients when they come in to get their perfect size. As we work our way around the design studio, next is going to be the cutting table. Having a table big enough to cut something out is so important. I know cutting out on the floor, man, been there, done that. Let me tell you, when I got a cutting table, so good. So we use this cutting table for gowns and having multiple sewing students at it at one time. And if you're wondering, where does a giant cutting table like this come from? Well, my dad built it for me. Thanks, Dad! Another thing I love about the design studio are all of the big windows. They're creating so much light to make it easier for sewing and designing. And in the studio, I have 2 ironing stations. I have one right here and one over here. Next up on the tour is going to be the industrial fur sewing machine. It was also used for sewing stuffed animals and gloves way back in the day, but I just use it to repair vintage fur coats. Cool thing about this sewing machine is that it feeds from left to right and the needle goes from back to front. What? So cool. Next up is going to be the 5-thread industrial serger. This thing sews so fast, so it's great for really big projects. Behind me is my inspiration wall where I keep my current projects that I'm working on. Right now, I'm working on a capsule lingerie collection, so that's why I've got lots of different elastics up here, different cool slides, really fun fabric. Inspiration wall is important so that way I know exactly what projects I'm working on, and when I'm gathering supplies, which ones do I have, which ones do I need, where are they gonna go on the garment, so that way I can sit down and sketch and just kind of have all my different inspiration supplies out. Sometimes this wall changes and there's sketches all over it or actual pictures for inspiration, but right now I have all of these lingerie supplies out. Next, we are about to get knee deep in notions, but first I wanted to show you these vintage sewing baskets that I have because I love the detail on them and I think they're so cute. This one is just like a hard plastic, so cool, love this green color. And this one is a woven wicker, and look at the textile on the top. It's so cool. And when you open it, it's nice and plush inside so you can put your pins into it. And I have a bunch of vintage thread spools in here. Hot pink one, my favorite, of course. And then in the bottom, I also have a bunch of really cool vintage sewing notions as well. Again, love the vintage sewing notions. Oh, look what's in here. Some cool Victorian photos. I always think these are so inspirational. And this here is the notions wall. So everything from embroidery thread to scissors, all pink, of course. Sewing thread, we've got bias tape, we have rotary cutters, we have hole punches, staplers, tape, electric scissors, blades, pins, snips, bobbins, hand sewing needles, all kinds of feet, boning, seam gauges, oh my God, I could go on and on forever. Everything you need to sew is on this wall right here. And around the corner, I have something really exciting to show you. Come on. It's my YouTube sewing tutorial shooting area. I've been trying to create the ultimate setup for shooting for so long, and I think I finally did it. We just put up this giant pink background back here, so that way we're always radiating pink. Duh, so fun. And I have my cutting table here, I have my dress forms, I have my sewing machine, my designer Epic 2 that I'm using right now. So yeah, I'm loving this area right now. Having this space just makes it so much easier to bring awesome content to you guys. This wall in the studio is dedicated to AccuMark. So this is what we use to digitally scan in patterns and work on the designs in the computer. So if you need a pattern digitized, hit me up, I'll digitize your patterns for you. Next to the YouTube shooting area is books. Books, and music. Two of my favorite things, books and music. So inspirational. I have so many art and craft books that I love looking through for inspiration and to see how they made things way back in the day. Some of my oldest books are from the early 1800s. What? So cool, right? I have sewing textbooks, I have quilting books, I have printing of fabric books, I have rock and roll history books. I've got so many different types of books and they're all related to art and fashion because those are my passions. Up above me, you'll notice my baby cutesy little sewing machines. Those are actually vintage kids sewing machines from way back in the day and they totally work, so cool. Also, you'll notice the vintage stereo system with a record player because I love playing music either through Spotify or from the records. I love listening to music and I generally listen to it all day, whether it's in class or just on my own hanging out in the studio. Next up, dress forms and muslin because they're essential to draping. I love draping gowns and draping designs. Sometimes I prefer it over pattern drafting. Moving along, we are here at Upcycling Alley. I have a giant rack of clothes that is just waiting to be upcycled. I'm currently working on this vintage fur coyote coat. I've taken out the lining and I put in this beautiful hot pink satin lining that I have also put some Thermalite on. I am always so cold, so this coat is gonna keep me so warm and now it's got some personality. I love vintage shopping and upcycling. I love the textures, I love the colors, I love the quality of the clothing from the past. There's just something about finding something from the past and saving it. Upcycling is awesome because not only are you saving the environment, you're also gonna get a unique sense of style because of it. So it's like a win-win. Under the upcycling rack, we have some vintage magazines. Well, I mean, if you consider 2004 vintage, then I guess they're vintage, but maybe just a little retro. So I love flipping through these sometimes for inspiration or just remembering what fashion was like back then. And down the street from Upcycling Alley, we have the dressing room where you can try on your creations that you're making in sewing class and see how they're looking, or I can help you tailor something as well, or maybe I've made you something and you need to try it on. And this is where we do that. Last but not least, you're probably wondering, why do I have 22 sewing machines when I can only sew on one at a time? Well, I teach sewing classes, so all of these sewing machines here are for the sewing students to use. I love teaching so much. It's so rewarding to see people learning something new and making something and creating something. It is just such a rewarding feeling. Also why I love making YouTube videos, because I love teaching you guys things and helping inspire you as well. Sewing is such an awesome skill to have because you can repair things, you can upcycle things, you can make things from scratch. I mean, let's face it, almost everything is sewn together. Whether it's a wedding dress or a blanket or a pot holder or a scarf or a snowsuit or maybe an umbrella. So many things in our life are all sewn together. It's such a great skill to have, and I love sharing it with everyone. Thanks so much for watching Sew Anastasia today. I hope you had fun taking my studio tour with me. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear them. Leave them down below. Also, I would love to see your sewing studio. So send me photos or tag me at Sew Anastasia so that way I can share it on social media with everybody else and keep us all inspired. Thanks so much for watching. Bye. If you're not already a subscriber to Sew Anastasia, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when all the new sewing tutorials come out. Also, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Sew Anastasia and Anastasia Chatzka. And as always, I would love to see your projects, so make sure you DM them to me or tag me in them so that way I can share them with everyone else. Happy sewing!